At 3 a.m., my mother pushed me onto the porch with an empty duffel bag and said, "You're no hero here." In the darkness, I saw what they couldn't. This wasn't a door closing, it was a gate opening to a campaign. Want to know how a single sentence can trigger an entire territory reclamation plan? Keep your sights steady. The cold concrete bit through my socks as the porch light flickered above, casting shadows that danced like reconnaissance footage. Behind me, the deadbolt clicked with military precision. They thought they were securing their perimeter. They were actually arming my offensive. My name is Lydia Hart, Captain, 41st Meridian Logistics Group, and at 3:07 a.m. on a Tuesday in October, I became a refugee in my own hometown of Ridgeport. The porch light above me stuttered like a dying radio transmission. My bare feet pressed against concrete that held 32 years of my footprint's first steps, prom night returns, deployment departures. Now it held my exile. The empty military duffel at my feet looked wrong, deflated like a collapsed lung. Behind the front door, I could hear my father's voice, low and certain. "It's done, Elaine. Finally done." My mother's silhouette shifted behind the frosted glass. Even through the distortion, I recognized her victory posture, shoulders back, chin lifted, the same stance she took when she'd successfully negotiated a discount at the farmer's market. Except this time, she'd negotiated away her daughter. The anniversary dinner 4 hours earlier should have been my warning flare. 25 years of marriage for Thomas and Elaine Hart, celebrated at their kitchen table with grocery store wine and targeted ordnance disguised as reminiscence. Marissa, my younger sister, had choreographed it perfectly, arriving late in her new Mercedes, PR-polished smile gleaming as she presented them with a digital photo frame preloaded with family memories. Memories where I was consistently cropped at the edges or caught mid-blink while she centered herself in high resolution. Remember this. She'd scrolled through vacation photos from Mackinac Island. "Mom, you looked so young here." What she didn't say. Remember how Lydia stayed behind to work that summer, wiring money so we could extend the trip. The kitchen had filled with their laughter while I'd pushed salmon around my plate. Calculating. Always calculating. $500 a month for 6 years, $36,000 hemorrhaged from my military pay to keep Hart Tactical and Outfitters from bleeding out. The old surplus store squatted on Monroe Street like a wounded soldier refusing medevac, and I'd been its invisible IV drip. "Lydia's so quiet tonight," my father had observed, not looking at me but through me, the way you'd check a rearview mirror. "Still playing soldier in your head." "Just tired, Dad." Marissa had laughed, bright and sharp. "She's always tired when she's home." "Right. Lyd, all that logistics stuff must be exhausting." Logistics. She pronounced it like a disease, like managing supply chains for forward operating bases was somehow less real than her job posting inspirational quotes on corporate Instagram accounts. The final assault came with dessert. Elaine's homemade apple pie, the one she used to make for my returns from deployment. Except tonight. She'd served Marissa first, then Dad, then herself. My plate came last, a thin slice that fell apart on the transfer. "We've been thinking," my mother had started, and I'd known. 20 years in uniform teaches you to recognize incoming fire. About the future, about what's best. "For the family," my father had added, still not meeting my eyes. Marissa's phone had been recording. I'd seen the red dot, subtle as a sniper's laser. Content for tomorrow's post. Difficult family conversations and boundary setting. "We need you to step back," Elaine had continued. "From the store, from everything. Marissa's been handling the marketing, bringing in young customers. The image needs to be consistent. Image, not inventory, not accounts payable, not the veteran network I'd cultivated to keep their doors open. Image." "The monthly transfers stop," my father had said, finally looking at me. "We're restructuring." Restructuring. Civilian speak for changing the locks while keeping the key holder's name on the lease. I'd stood to leave. No argument, no begging. In combat. You don't negotiate with ordnance already in flight. 3 hours later, they'd woken me with purpose. Elaine's voice through my childhood door. Get up. Pack what's yours. Nothing that belongs to this house. The duffel had been waiting in the hallway, my old deployment bag, deliberately emptied. Message received. Now. Standing on their porch at 317A, Mem. I felt the Michigan wind cut through my thermal shirt. The street was empty except for a neighbor's cat and the distant hum of the interstate. Somewhere, a third-shift worker was heading to a job that probably paid him enough to not steal from his children. I picked up the duffel, its weight nothing but canvas and zippers, 30 feet to the sidewalk, 1,500 feet to the Shell station, 3 miles to the Motel 6 off Route 12. But first, I stood at attention on their lawn and gave my childhood home a perfect salute. Not for them they weren't watching. For the girl who'd once believed this ground was worth defending. Roger that, I whispered to the dark windows. Mission parameters received. The grass was wet with pre-dawn dew. It soaked through my socks with each step, cold and honest. By the time I reached the sidewalk, I'd already begun composing my first operations order. Objective total battlefield reversal. Timeline, whatever it takes. Rules of engagement, weapons free. Behind me, the porch light finally died completely. Ahead, the Shell station glowed like a forward operating base. I shifted the empty duffel to my other shoulder and began my march. The Motel 6 room smelled like industrial bleach and abandoned hopes. I sat on the bed's edge at 543A, laptop open, building what I would later call the heart file, a reconnaissance report on my own family. First, the photographs. I'd saved everything to cloud storage, a habit from deployment where physical copies meant nothing if your FOB took indirect fire. Christmas 2018. Marissa centered beneath the tree, me half visible carrying in firewood. Graduation day at Michigan State. Marissa's bachelor's ceremony got 17 photos. My ROTC commissioning got 3, all blurred. Mom's birthday dinner last year. Marissa presenting a spa certificate while my envelope of cash sat unopened beside the breadbasket. Pattern recognition. In logistics, we track patterns, supply flow, consumption rates, loss points. In families, apparently, patterns track who matters and who's just supply chain. I pulled up my bank statements next. Wells Fargo's interface loaded slowly on the motel's Wi-Fi, but the numbers came through clear as field coordinates. $500, first of every month. Automated transfer to Hart Tactical and Outfitters business account. 6 years, 2 months. $37,000 total. The memo line always read, inventory support. But inventory doesn't buy loyalty. I switched tabs to email, searching Hart Tactical in my sent folder. Hundreds of results cascaded down connections made. Suppliers introduced. Veteran organizations contacted on their behalf. There, an email to Colonel Mike Reeves, retired, convincing him to host his monthly veteran meetups at the store. There, another to Defense Logistics Agency contacts, suggesting Hart Tactical for small batch procurement trials. Each message a round fired in their defense, unacknowledged. My phone buzzed. Marissa's Instagram story updated. A black screen with white text. Setting boundaries with toxic family members is self-care, even when they wear uniforms. The comments were already flowing. Hearts and prayer hands from her marketing friends who'd never met me but somehow knew I was toxic. She'd tagged it "Our family trauma," "Our healing journey," narcissistic abuse. I screenshotted everything. In combat, we document violations of the Geneva Convention. In family warfare, apparently, we document violations of basic truth. The real intelligence came from diving deeper into public records, a skill my S2 shop taught me. Wisconsin Business Registry, Hart Tactical and Outfitters, LLC, registered owners, Thomas Hart, 51%, Elaine Hart, 25%, Marissa Hart, 24%. My name, nowhere. But there, in the financial disclosures required for their last small business loan application, Additional capital support $500 monthly from family investor. Family investor. Not daughter, not Lydia. Family investor. I pulled up the store's Facebook page next, managed by Marissa for the past 2 years, post after post about our family legacy, and 3 generations of heart dedication. The most recent, from last week, featured Marissa behind the counter in designer camouflage, playing dress-up in the heritage I'd been financing. Caption: some daughters inherit businesses, others inherit the warrior spirit to transform them. Girl boss, military family, next generation, 700 likes, 43 comments about her sacrifice and dedication. I found the supplier contracts in my email documents they'd asked me to review, with your military eye over the years. Ridgeport Military Surplus, Great Lakes Tactical Distributors, Midwest Survival Gear, Inc. All contacts I'd facilitated, relationships I'd built during leave, using my reputation to vouch for a failing store that couldn't make minimum orders. Then I found it. The smoking gun in a forward chain from 2 months ago. Marissa to Elaine. Accidentally CC'd to the business account I still had access to. Mom. Once Lydia's deployment money dries up, we can pivot to the athleisure concept. Young professionals want tactical aesthetic, not actual tactical. Jake's investor group is interested but wants to see us clean house first. You know what I mean. Elaine's reply: let's wait until after the anniversary dinner. Your father needs time to adjust to the idea. Clean house. I was dust to be swept. I created a new folder, Operation Reciprocity. Inside, subfolders, financial documentation, legal grounds, supply chain intel, social media evidence, email trails, each file named with military precision. Wide category description. The same system I used to track convoys in Kandahar. My phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. Captain Hart. The voice was older, careful. This is Ruth Davenport. I believe you know me as Aunt Ruth, though we're not technically related anymore since your uncle passed. Ruth. Former Air Force colonel, retired JAG, current state circuit judge. I'd sent her a Christmas card every year, even when the family forgot she existed. Ma'am, I said, muscle memory snapping me straight even in a motel room. I heard about tonight. Small town, big ears. You documenting everything? Yes, ma'am. Good. Bring your files to my office tomorrow at 0800, not as your aunt as your legal advisor. Pro bono. Some battles require air support. Roger that, ma'am. She paused. Lydia, they teach you about Pyrrhic victories at War College. Win the battle but lose the war. Yes, ma'am. Good. Then you know we're not aiming for Pyrrhic. We're aiming for Sherman's March. Total war, complete victory, no infrastructure left for enemy recovery. Understood, ma'am. After she hung up, I stared at the laptop screen, at the 6 years of evidence glowing in neat digital folders. Behind every transfer, every email, every connection made was a belief that family meant something more than shared DNA. That service meant something beyond uniform wearing. They'd kicked me out with an empty duffel. They had no idea I was about to return with a full armory. Ruth Davenport's office occupied the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian on Maple Street. All dark wood and legal gravity. At 800 hours sharp, I stood in her doorway with my laptop and 6 years of financial hemorrhaging documented in PDF format. Sit, she commanded, pointing to a leather chair that had absorbed decades of legal strategy. Ruth looked exactly as colonels should age steel gray hair. Sharp eyes, bearing that could make lieutenants cry. Coffee. Black, ma'am. Good. Cream is for civilians who can't handle truth undiluted. She poured from a pot that looked like it had survived Desert Storm. Now, brief me like I'm your commanding officer and you've got hostiles in the wire. I opened my laptop, turned it toward her. 6 years of financial support, $37,000, 0 legal documentation of my stake in Hart Tactical and Outfitters. Business registry shows ownership split between parents and sister. I'm ghost money. Continue. Email evidence of planned removal from family structure. Social media defamation beginning at 0600 today. Pattern of financial dependence on my contributions while publicly erasing my involvement. Ruth clicked through the files. Expression neutral as a no man's land. Credit report. I pulled it up. Clean until last month. Then a hard inquiry I didn't authorize from Ridgeport Community Credit Union. Her eyes sharpened. Pull your full report, now! The Wi-Fi was faster here. The results loaded like incoming artillery coordinates. There it was, a second credit line opened 3 weeks ago. Hart Tactical Business Loan. My social security number as guarantor. Electronic signature that wasn't mine. Identity theft, Ruth said. Voice flat as a runway. Federal crime, plus fraud. Your father's signature on the application has to be, he's primary on the business accounts. Outstanding, she actually smiled. They just upgraded from family dispute to federal felony. Who else knows you're here? No one, ma'am. Wrong answer. You need witnesses, allies, supply lines. She picked up her phone, hit speaker. Tessa Ruth Davenport. That captain you mentioned last month, Hart, she needs immediate backup. My office. 30 minutes. Lieutenant Tessa Quinn arrived in 25, still in ACUs, looking like she'd driven straight from Fort Custer. Captain, she said, snapping a salute that I returned from muscle memory. At ease, Lieutenant. We're off duty. Negative, ma'am. Once family draws first blood, we're always on duty. She dropped into the chair beside me. Heard about last night. Also heard Marissa's trying to trend with #StolenValor, claiming you're exaggerating your service for sympathy. I hadn't seen that yet. Tessa pulled up her phone, showed me Marissa's latest a long post about how some people use military service as a manipulation tactic and a shield from accountability. Screenshot everything, Ruth ordered. Defamation per se when she implies stolen valor. That's career-ending accusation for active duty. My phone buzzed. Noah Pike, civilian contractor from my last rotation. Engineer who'd kept our generators running through sandstorms and stupidity. Lydia, saw Marissa's posts. You need technical support. I'm between contracts. 2 hours from Ridgeport. I showed Ruth the text. She nodded. Bring him in. Civilian witnesses play well in court. By noon, we'd assembled in Ruth's conference room, me, Tessa, Noah, who'd driven down in a pickup that had seen better decades, and Ruth presiding like a joint chiefs meeting. Strategic objectives, Ruth began, writing on a whiteboard. 1. Recover financial losses. 2. Clear identity theft. 3. Neutralize defamation. 4. Prevent future contact. Traditional family reconciliation is off the table, they fired first. We finish. Questions. Rules of engagement. Tessa asked. Legal channels only. No social media combat that's their terrain. They chose it expecting you to fight there. We take the high ground courts, credit bureaus, federal authorities if necessary. The store, Noah said quietly. It's their center of gravity. Cut that. Everything collapses. Ruth smiled like a shark sensing blood. Precisely. Lydia. Can you access their supplier accounts? I have the contact lists, previous correspondence. They used my connections to establish credit terms. Perfect. We'll need those. She turned to the board, drew connecting lines. Phase 1, secure your position. Cancel all automatic transfers immediately. Document every penny previously sent. File identity theft reports with credit bureaus, FTC, and FBI. Phase 2, shape the battlefield. Notify suppliers about potential fraud. Create paper trail of concerns. Phase 3, decisive action. What's decisive action? I asked. Depends what they do next. But I'm betting Marissa escalates on social media. Your parents panic about the credit investigation, and they make a critical error. When they do, we strike. Tessa leaned forward. What about the Helena Valor Initiative the captain mentioned, the nonprofit concept? Ruth's eyes gleamed. Excellent psychological operation. Register it immediately. Nothing threatens a false narrative like a competing truth. Name it after your grandmother. Helena Hart was my maternal grandmother. Air Force nurse. Korea. Died when I was 12. Perfect lineage. Establishes you as the true keeper of military heritage. Noah. Can you build a simple website? Give me 6 hours and decent coffee. We spent the afternoon constructing legal architecture like building a fire base, federal forms for identity theft, state forms for fraud notification, cease and desist templates for defamation. Each document another sandbag in our defensive position. At 15:30 hours, Tessa pulled me aside. Captain, you know this ends with bridges burned to bedrock, right? They lit the match at 3A. Lieutenant, I'm just controlling the burn pattern. Roger that. She squeezed my shoulder. I've got your 6. We all do. By evening, the Helena Valor Initiative had a registered e-ion, a basic website showcasing support for female veterans, and its first donation, $100 from Ruth Davenport. The tagline Noah created read, "Honor is earned in service, not inherited through blood." My phone had 63 missed calls from family members who'd suddenly remembered I existed. I didn't answer any of them. In combat, you don't negotiate with an enemy that's already shown you their rules of engagement. Instead, I sat in Ruth's conference room, watching the sunset over Ridgeport, planning tomorrow's operations. The heart file grew with each hour, each document another round in an ammunition supply that would soon overwhelm their defenses. They wanted me gone, mission accepted, but I was choosing my own extraction terms. Day 3 of exile. Marissa's escalation came at 0700 like clockwork mortars. A Medium article titled, "When Your Sister's Military Complex Becomes Toxic, a Survivor's Story." 2,000 words of fabricated trauma, implying I'd threatened them, suggesting PTSD had made me unstable, linking to resources for families dealing with violent veterans. Tessa found it first, forwarded with a single comment. She just gave us ammunition. The language was carefully crafted, never quite stating I was dangerous, just letting readers connect dots she'd arranged. Comments poured in from strangers offering sympathy, sharing their own stories about damaged veterans. One suggested they should seek restraining orders before something happens. Ruth read it in her office, glasses reflecting screen light. "Beautiful," she said, which made me look up from my coffee. "She's put it in writing, on a platform that timestamps and archives. Legal Discovery will love this." My phone rang. "Dad." "Answer it," Ruth said, hitting record on her desk device. "Speaker." "Lydia." His voice carried that forced authority he used with difficult customers. "This needs to stop. Your sister's just expressing her feelings." "Which feelings?" "Dad. The ones where she implies I'm violent, or the ones where she's been planning to push me out for months." "You're twisting things, like always, making it about money." "The $37,000 I gave you was about money." Silence. Then, "That was family support. We never asked." "You never asked directly, just mentioned the late notices, the supplier threats, the possibility of closing, every month for 6 years. If you're going to be petty about voluntary help, voluntary, interesting word choice, like the voluntary credit line you opened in my name." The silence stretched longer this time. Ruth smiled like a prosecutor who'd just heard a confession. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Ridgeport Community Credit Union. 3 weeks ago. Electronic signature. My social security number." "Marissa handled that paperwork. Said you'd agreed." Ruth grabbed the phone. "Mr. Hart, this is Judge Ruth Davenport, acting as Captain Hart's legal counsel. You've just admitted to conspiracy to commit identity theft. I suggest you cease this contact immediately and retain an attorney." She hung up before he could respond. Within an hour, Marissa's Instagram went nuclear. Screenshots of her Medium article overlaid with crying selfies. "When you try to help someone and they threaten you with lawyers, this is why veteran mental health matters. They come back different. Dangerous." The word dangerous finally crossed the line Ruth had been waiting for. "Defamation per se," she announced, implying criminal behavior, unfitness for profession, mental incompetence. She hit the trifecta. "Noah. How's our documentation?" Noah had set up a monitoring system, capturing everything in real time. Every post, comment, share, and timestamp archived. She's deleted 3 posts already, but we got them first. Perfect. Consciousness of guilt. Lydia. Time to file reports. The Federal Trade Commission's identity theft report took an hour. The FBI's IC3 complaint, another hour. The Credit Bureau disputes, 30 minutes each. Each submission generated case numbers, creating a paper trail that would follow the Hart family name through every future credit check. Cousin Janet called next. The family messenger. Lydia, honey, your mom's having chest pains from the stress. Is this what you want? What I wanted was to not be robbed and slandered. How's that working out? You're being dramatic. Family doesn't involve federal authorities. Family doesn't steal Social Security numbers either. Yet, here we are. She hung up. Within minutes, Marissa posted about my lack of empathy and how some people choose violence over healing. The suppliers started calling that afternoon. Ruth had sent carefully worded notices to each vendor in my contact list, alerting them to potential irregularities in Hart Tactical's recent financial representations and suggesting they verify all credit applications and ownership claims. Professional language for their lying to you, too. Great Lakes Tactical Distributors called first. Captain Hart. This is Bill Morrison. Got a concerning letter about Hart Tactical. You're saying the recent orders aren't legitimate. I'm saying I can't vouch for orders placed after October 1st, when my advisory role ended. Any financial guarantees based on my involvement would be premature. They listed you as a silent partner on last month's Net 30 application. I have no legal stake in Hart Tactical and Outfitters. Mr. Morrison, never have. He cursed. They owe us $12 grand. I'd suggest reviewing your credit terms. By evening, 6 suppliers had called. 2 had already frozen Hart Tactical's accounts pending verification. The store's Facebook page filled with confused comments. Why is my order delayed? And are you closing? Marissa tried damage control, posting about growing pains and restructuring for excellence. But beneath, suppliers started commenting directly, "Please respond to our credit department's calls." My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "You're destroying us. How could you?" I didn't respond. Ruth had advised complete radio silence except through legal channels. Instead, I watched from my motel room as their world tilted. The store's Google reviews dropped as customers complained about unfulfilled orders. Marissa's influencer friends started distancing, quietly deleting supportive comments. The hashtag she'd created, #toxic veteran sister, had been hijacked by actual veterans calling out her stolen valor implications. Tessa arrived at 2100 with takeout and a tablet showing social media analytics. She's losing followers, down 300 since this morning. Comments are turning against her. I don't care about her followers. You should. It's evidence of reputational damage, yours and theirs. Ruth says document everything for the countersuit. Countersuit. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Captain, Noah said from his laptop in the corner. You need to see this. He'd found the business loan application, posted in discovery documents from an unrelated lawsuit against the credit union. There it was my signature, except it wasn't. Digital forensics would prove that in court. They're going to offer settlement, Ruth said when I called her. Probably tomorrow, when the suppliers start demanding immediate payment. They'll want this to go away quietly. And we're going to refuse? They wanted war. They're getting Sherman's march. Total victory, remember. I stood at the motel window, watching Ridgeport sleep. Somewhere across town, my parents were probably awake, fielding creditor calls, watching their carefully constructed narrative collapse. Marissa was likely crafting another post, trying to spin fraud charges into victimhood. They'd taught me something valuable at 3 days ago, family could be just another word for enemy. And enemies. I knew how to fight. My phone lit up with another text from Dad. The store won't survive this. Good, I thought. Neither did my trust in you. The credit union would open at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We'd be there at 8:59. Federal case numbers in hand, ready to file criminal charges. They'd wanted me gone. They were about to learn the difference between retreat and strategic repositioning. Ridgeport Community Credit Union's executive office smelled like fear and furniture polish at 9:15. The branch manager, David Hutchinson, sat across from Ruth and me, sweat beading despite the October cold. Between us lay the federal case numbers, the fraudulent loan application, and a forensic analysis Noah had run overnight proving the signature timestamps didn't match my deployment location. "This is significant," Hutchinson managed, papers trembling in his hands. "It's fraud," Ruth corrected. "Your institution processed a loan with falsified documents. The FBI will want to know about your verification procedures." "We had no way of knowing the IP address," I said, sliding Noah's analysis forward. "The signature was executed from Ridgeport. I was at Fort Campbell that day. My unit's duty roster confirms it." Hutchinson's face went from pale to gray. "What do you want?" "Full documentation of every transaction. Immediate freeze on all Hart Tactical accounts. Formal statement acknowledging the fraudulent application. And," Ruth leaned forward, "assignment of the debt obligation to its rightful signatory, whoever actually completed that application." "That could bankrupt them." "That's not Captain Hart's problem." By 10:30, we had everything documented. The credit union's fraud department opened an investigation. Hart Tactical's operating accounts were frozen pending review. The $12,000 credit line was flagged as fraudulent, removed from my credit report, and reassigned for investigation. My phone exploded with calls I didn't answer. But Tessa, monitoring social media, provided play-by-play. "Marissa's melting down. She's posting about financial abuse and weaponizing the system. Wait, she just deleted it. Now she's posting about taking a healing break from toxic energy." The suppliers moved next. Without operating accounts, Hart Tactical couldn't process payments. By noon, 3 had initiated collection proceedings. 2 more demanded immediate payment or return of inventory. Ruth had prepared for this. "Phase 2, she announced, pulling out incorporation documents. "Helena Valor Initiative files for emergency procurement status with the same suppliers. We offer to fulfill any outstanding veteran organization orders that Hart Tactical can't deliver. We're taking their contracts. We're ensuring veterans get their supplies. If that happens to demonstrate who actually has the relationships and expertise, that's collateral benefit." I called Bill Morrison at Great Lakes Tactical. "Bill, it's Lydia Hart. I hear you have trapped inventory." 12 grand worth, sitting in limbo. Your family's not returning calls. "They're not my family anymore, but those veteran orders still need filling. Helena Valor Initiative can take them off your hands. Pay on delivery." "You're serious?" "I've got the same contacts, same relationships, plus actual operating capital. Ruth Davenport is our board chair." "Judge Davenport hell." "Lydia, why didn't you say so? When can you take delivery?" By 1400 hours, Helena Valor had assumed 6 outstanding orders, paid in full, delivered on time. Every veteran organization that had been waiting on Hart Tactical supplies received apologetic calls from me, explaining the transition and ensuring no interruption in service. The Facebook messages started flowing not to Hart Tactical, but to Helena Valor's page that Noah had built out during lunch. "Thank God someone's reliable. Hart Tactical left us hanging. You saved our fundraiser. Professional, efficient, actual military values." Each comment was a nail in Hart Tactical's reputation coffin. At 1500, Thomas called Ruth's office directly. "Speaker," she mouthed to me, hitting record. "Judge Davenport, this has gone too far. The store is collapsing. Your store is experiencing consequences. Mr. Hart, there's a difference. We'll return the money, all of it, every penny Lydia sent. With interest." "What interest?" 6 years at 7%, standard lending rate, roughly $43,000. "That's extortion. That's mathematics. Your daughter provided an interest-free loan you never documented. The IRS might call that tax evasion. Actually." Silence. Then, Elaine's voice, shrill. She was helping family. Family you kicked out at 3 with an empty bag, Ruth responded. Family whose identity you stole. Family you publicly labeled as dangerous and mentally unstable. Marissa got carried away. Marissa committed defamation per se. We have screenshots of everything, including the deleted posts. Would you prefer criminal charges or civil litigation? Captain Hart is considering both. Thomas's voice cracked. What do you want? Ruth looked at me. I took the phone. Full repayment, $43,000. Written apology, notarized, admitting the fraud and defamation. Complete cessation of contact, no calls, texts, emails, social media mentions, nothing. Transfer of all veteran organization contracts to Helena Valor Initiative, and Marissa posts a public retraction of every single lie. The store will close. Then it closes. You're our daughter. Was past tense. You chose that at 3 on a Tuesday? Elaine sobbed in the background. We just wanted what was best. For Marissa? You wanted what was best for Marissa? I was just the funding source. That's not true. Your emails say otherwise. Clean house. Remember, once Lydia's deployment money dries up. Your words. Mom. Your plan. The line went quiet except for breathing. 48 hours, I said. Ruth will send the settlement documents. Sign them, or we proceed with criminal charges. The FBI doesn't care that we share DNA. I hung up. Noah looked up from his laptop. The store's website just went down. Internal server error. They can't afford the hosting, Tessa observed. Credit cards are probably frozen too. We sat in Ruth's conference room, watching Hart Tactical and Outfitters collapse in real time. Suppliers posting warnings, customers demanding refunds. Marissa's influencer career imploding as the veteran community rallied against her stolen valor implications. You know what's ironic, Noah said. Building Helena Valor's procurement page. You're going to end up with exactly what they had. The contracts, the relationships, the reputation, but earned, not stolen. Ruth poured scotch the good stuff from her desk drawer. To strategic victory, we toasted as the sun set over Ridgeport. Somewhere across town, my parents were learning what happened when you mistook logistics for weakness, silence for acceptance, service for servitude. The phone rang. Unknown number. Helena Valor Initiative, I answered. My new beginning built on their burned bridges. How can we serve you? Friday night. Ruth's war room transformed into an operations center. 42 hours remained on the ultimatum, but the intelligence suggested they wouldn't last 20. Hart Tactical's Facebook page had gone dark after a flood of supplier complaints. Marissa's Instagram was private now, her follower count hemorrhaging like an arterial bleed. Tomorrow's their founder's sale, Tessa announced, reading from an old promotional email. Advertised for weeks, their biggest revenue day of the year. Ruth smiled that shark smile I'd learned to recognize as imminent victory. Perfect. Public humiliation on their chosen battlefield. We're not going to interfere, I said. It wasn't a question I knew Ruth better than that. Interfere. No. We're going to conclude. Noah, what's the legal status on the debt assignment? Noah pulled up documents on his tablet. Credit union confirmed the fraudulent loan has been reassigned to Thomas Hart pending investigation. Collection proceedings begin Monday if no payment arrangement is made. And the suppliers. 5 have filed liens, 3 more threatening legal action. Total outstanding $38,000. More than what they owed me. Poetic. The building lease, Ruth continued, studying her notes. Commercial property, due on the 1st, today's the 28th. Can they make rent? Not with frozen accounts, I answered. Contact the property management company. Inform them of the situation. As concerned citizens, of course. Tessa made the call. Professional and detached. Yes, there were credit concerns. Yes. Federal fraud investigations were pending. Yes. Operating accounts were frozen. Just thought they should know. By 2100 hours, Project No-Fly Zone was locked and loaded. Execution timeline, Ruth began, writing on the whiteboard. 0700 Credit Union opens. 0730 formal debt collection notice delivered to store. 0800 store opens for founder's sale. 0815 Sheriff's Department serves cease and desist for commercial operations pending fraud investigation. They can't stop a sale for fraud allegations, Noah said. No, but they can for operating without valid business licensing, which expired yesterday, which they can't renew with frozen accounts. The room went silent as we absorbed the beauty of bureaucratic warfare. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number with a local area code. Lydia, this is Pastor Morrison from First Methodist. Your mother asked me to reach out. Could we talk about forgiveness? I showed it to Ruth. She typed my response. Forgiveness follows repentance. Repentance requires acknowledgement of harm. They're still lying. No. Saturday morning came gray and drizzling. Perfect weather for an execution. I positioned myself in the coffee shop across from Hart Tactical at 0645. Laptop open. Helena Valor's supplier portal growing with each refreshed page. Tessa sat beside me in civilian clothes, phone ready to document. Noah parked his truck where he could see both entrances. 0700 Ridgeport Community Credit Union opened. Through Ruth's legal channels, I knew the formal notice was being prepared. 0720. Thomas Hart's BMW pulled up to the store. He looked older, shoulders bent like he was carrying invisible rucksacks. Elaine followed in her Toyota, movements sharp and desperate. 0730. A courier arrived, manila envelope thick with legal weight. Thomas signed, read, and slumped against the doorframe. Even from across the street, I could see his hands shaking. 0745. Marissa arrived in her Mercedes, dressed for camera-ready success. She started arranging the window display, oblivious to the papers her father was still holding. 0755. First customers began gathering. Regular supporters, veteran groups, the loyal base I'd cultivated over 6 years. They didn't know their store was already dead. 0800, Thomas flipped the sign to open. The electronic locks didn't respond. The security company had suspended service for non-payment. He used his key instead, manual and fumbling. Customers entered slowly, sensing something wrong. 0807, 2 sheriff's deputies arrived. Not aggressive, just purposeful. They handed Thomas another envelope, spoke briefly, and posted a notice on the door. 0809. Customers began leaving, confused and murmuring. One veteran I recognized, Sergeant Major Williams, retired, stopped to read the notice, then looked directly at the coffee shop where I sat. He knew. Somehow, he knew. 0811. Marissa started recording on her phone, trying to spin the narrative. Harassment, she was saying, loud enough to carry across the street. This is targeted harassment of a small family business. 0813. The property manager arrived with his own notice. Emergency lease termination for fraudulent financial representations. 30 days to vacate. 0815. A news van pulled up. Ruth's doing she'd tipped them about a local business fraud story. Marissa's face went from red to white as she realized her live stream was about to become actual news. 0817. Thomas walked out, leaving Elaine and Marissa inside. He stood on the sidewalk, rain soaking his polo shirt, looking at nothing. Then his eyes found me through the coffee shop window. We stared at each other across 40 feet of wet pavement and 6 years of extracted value. He raised his hand, not a wave, more like surrender. I didn't move. 0820. The supplier's truck arrived, not delivering, collecting. Inventory reclamation for non-payment. Legal under the terms Thomas had signed, never reading the fine print I'd warned him about years ago. 0825. Marissa emerged, designer camouflage soaked, makeup running. She spotted me too, started across the street. Tessa stood, blocking her path on the sidewalk. You're trespassing on future memories, Tessa said, cold as Michigan winter. Keep walking. Marissa looked past her at me. You did this. You destroyed us. I finally spoke, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. I financed you for 6 years. You destroyed yourselves in 3 days. 08:30. The news reporter approached Thomas for comment. He walked to his BMW without answering, Elaine following, leaving Marissa to face the cameras alone. She tried to perform, tried to spin, but the reporter had done her homework. Ms. Hart, is it true you posted about your sister's mental health while simultaneously committing identity theft? The live stream ended. The cameras kept rolling. 08:35 Hart Tactical and Outfitters sign flickered and died power cut for non-payment. I closed my laptop, gathered my things. The opening moves were complete. All that remained was the final documentation. Ruth texted settlement documents delivered to their attorney. They have until Monday 8 a.m. to sign. I walked out of the coffee shop into the rain, past the dying store, past the news van, past the ghost of who I'd been when I believed family meant something sacred. Behind me, I heard metal grinding the Hart Tactical sign being removed by the property manager, reclaiming his collateral. The sound was perfect punctuation. Saturday morning, 7:55 a.m. The founder's sale that should have been Hart Tactical's biggest revenue day became ground zero for their complete collapse. I positioned myself in the coffee shop across the street, laptop open to Helena Valor's operations dashboard, watching their empire fall in real time. Tessa sat beside me, phone recording. Noah had his truck parked where he could document both entrances. Ruth was at her office, coordinating the legal strikes like artillery support. Movement, Tessa said. Thomas just pulled up. His BMW looked freshly washed, keeping up appearances even as the foundations crumbled. He walked to the store entrance, shoulders rigid with false authority. The open sign flickered twice before dying. Power had been cut at midnight for non-payment. 800 hours. Thomas flipped the manual sign, fumbling with keys. The expensive electronic lock system I'd warned against had been disabled by the security company yesterday. Every decision they'd made without me was haunting them. Elaine arrived next, carrying a box of what looked like hastily printed flyers. Damage control. Too late. 8:03. First customers began arriving. Veterans mostly. The Saturday morning regulars who'd been coming since I'd built those relationships. They didn't know they were walking into a funeral. 8:05. Marissa's Mercedes screeched into the lot. She emerged in full influencer costume designer tactical wear that had never seen actual field use. Camera-ready makeup, phone already recording for her authentic small business owner content. 8:07. The first sheriff's deputy arrived. Not aggressive, just purposeful. He handed Thomas an envelope, spoke briefly, posted notice on the door. Cease and desist for operating without valid licensing. Their business license expired yesterday, Ruth texted. Can't renew with frozen accounts. 8:09. Customers started reading the notice, backing away confused. I recognized Sergeant Major Williams, retired, who'd bought his gear there for 15 years. He looked directly at the coffee shop, found my eyes, nodded once. He knew. 8:10. The removal truck backed up to the loading dock. 3 men emerged with clipboards and hand trucks. Inventory reclamation for the 5 suppliers who'd filed liens. Marissa started her live stream, voice pitched high with practiced distress. This is targeted harassment of a family business. They're destroying our American dream. 8:12. The property manager arrived with his own team. Emergency lease termination notice in hand, locksmith in tow. 30 days to vacate had become immediate eviction for fraud. 8:15. The news van pulled up. Ruth's timing was perfect. She'd tipped them about a developing story about veteran fraud. The reporter was Jennifer Chen, known for aggressive investigation of financial crimes. Thomas tried to retreat inside, but the deputies blocked him. Sir, you can't operate. The store is closed pending investigation. This is my store. Not according to these documents. 8:17. The power company truck arrived. Not to restore service, to remove the meter. The account was so delinquent they were reclaiming equipment. Marissa's live stream descended into chaos. This is military harassment. My sister is using her connections. Jennifer Chin appeared beside her with a microphone. Ms. Hart, is it true you implied your sister had PTSD to deflect from identity theft charges? The live stream cut off. 8:20. Suppliers began loading inventory. Tactical vests, camping gear, surplus equipment, everything that wasn't nailed down, and much that was. They had legal right to reclaim collateral on defaulted accounts. I opened Helena Valor's supplier portal. 6 new contracts pending, all from vendors who just witnessed Hart Tactical's implosion. Business abhors a vacuum, and I was ready to fill it. 8:23. Thomas approached Marissa, gesturing wildly, even from across the street. I could read his lips. Fix this. She turned on him, equally vicious. Their united front crumbled as fast as their storefront. Elaine stood between them, crying, flyers scattered at her feet. 8:25. The locksmith began changing locks. The Hart Tactical sign was being unbolted by the property manager's crew. 20 years of business, 6 years of my shadow support, dissolving in 30 minutes. Check cleared, Ruth texted. Settlement documents signed and delivered. No contact orders in effect. 8:27. A U-Haul pulled up. The driver emerged with work orders cleaning crew, hired by the property manager to prep for new tenants. They waited, watching the chaos with professional detachment. 8:30. Thomas walked to his BMW, defeated. Elaine followed, no longer crying, just empty. Marissa stood alone by her Mercedes. Designer tactical wear stained with failure, phone dark, influence evaporated. She looked across at the coffee shop, found me watching, started to approach. Noah intercepted her on the sidewalk. No ma'am, that's a no-fly zone now. I need to talk to her. The restraining order says otherwise. 8:33. The last box was loaded. The removal truck pulled away with 6 years of inventory I'd helped source, relationships I'd built, contracts I'd negotiated, all of it redistributed to suppliers who'd learned to trust the Hart name through me, not them. 8:35. The Hart Tactical sign hit the ground with a metal scream that echoed off the buildings. The sound was perfect, the death rattle of their empire, the birth cry of my freedom. 8:37. Workers began covering the windows with brown paper. By Monday, new tenants would be measuring for their own dreams. 8:40. My phone rang. Bill Morrison from Great Lakes Tactical. Lydia, that was something to watch. You need inventory for Helena Valor. I've got surplus from the Hart Reclamation. Discount for you, call it a founding partner rate. Send me the list. Bill, cash on delivery. 8:45. The street was almost empty. Just the cleaning crew, the paper-covered windows, and ghost letters on brick where the sign had been. Thomas's BMW was gone. Elaine's Toyota, vanished. Marissa's Mercedes, retreated. I closed my laptop, stood up. Tessa and Noah flanked me as we walked out of the coffee shop, across the street, past the remnants of what had been Hart Tactical and Outfitters. I stopped at the door, now bearing an eviction notice and federal investigation seal. Reached into my pocket, pulled out my old store key, the one they'd never asked me to return. Dropped it through the mail slot. The sound it made hitting the floor inside was final. Absolute. Perfect. Ready? Noah asked. Roger that. We walked 3 blocks to Helena Valor Initiative's temporary office. Small, clean, honest. Tessa had already hung our first certificate veteran-owned business certification, something Hart Tactical had never qualified for, despite their stolen valor marketing. 8:55. I sat at my desk, my own desk, in my own office, running my own business built on my own relationships with my own reputation. The phone was already ringing. Orders to fill, veterans to serve, a future to build without the weight of parasitic family dragging me down. Helena Valor Initiative, I answered. Captain Hart speaking. How can we serve you today? Behind me, visible through the window, the empty skeleton of Hart Tactical and Outfitters stood like a monument to what happens when you mistake logistics for weakness, silence for surrender, family for forever. I turned my back on it and faced forward. Mission complete. Monday, 7:55 a.m. Ruth's office felt like a forward operating base before the final assault. The settlement documents lay on the conference table, signature pages flagged with yellow tabs. $43,000. Notarized apology. No contact order. Everything I'd demanded. They'll come, Ruth said, checking her watch. They have no choice. 7:58. Through the window, I watched Thomas's BMW pull into the parking lot, followed by Elaine's Toyota. No Mercedes Marissa hadn't come. Or couldn't face me. 7:59. The office door opened. My parents entered like prisoners approaching sentencing. Thomas carried a cashier's check. Elaine held a folder the signed documents. I assumed. 800 hours exactly. They stood before Ruth's desk, not looking at me. The check, Thomas said, sliding it forward. $43,000, drawn on what I knew had to be their retirement account. Ruth examined it, nodded, passed it to me. My name on the pay-to line looked foreign after years of automatic transfers flowing the opposite direction. The documents, Elaine whispered, pushing the folder across the desk. Her hands trembled. Everything you demanded, signed, notarized. Ruth reviewed each page with surgical precision. The apology letter. Thomas pulled out a single sheet, his engineering handwriting cramped and precise. I, Thomas Hart, acknowledge fraudulent use of Captain Lydia Hart's identity for financial gain. I acknowledge systematic extraction of financial support while denying recognition or ownership stake. I acknowledge defamation through my wife and daughter's public statements, which I failed to correct. I apologize without reservation. Below it, Elaine's matching confession. Below that, Marissa's apparently signed under legal duress to avoid personal prosecution. The no-contact agreement, signed, Thomas said. We won't contact you. Ever. Ruth looked at me. This was my moment to speak, to rage, to demand more. Instead, I stood, picked up the check, and walked to the door. Then stopped. Gia Jean, I said, using the Vietnamese I'd learned during joint operations. Means family. The store neighborhood Little Saigon, they taught me that word. They also taught me another fanboy. Betrayal. You betrayed family. I just ended a war. 8:07. I walked past them to the window, watching the street below wake up. Behind me, Ruth handled the final logistics filing receipts, confirming transfers, establishing the legal walls that would separate us forever. 8:09. A removal truck pulled up across the street. Hart Tactical and Outfitters inventory being loaded out, destined for auction. Each box carried years of my connections, my relationships, my invisible labor. 8:10. My phone buzzed. Noah, Helena Valor website just hit 1,000 visitors, 3 contracts pending, 2 donations received. 8:11. Tessa, Marissa's Instagram is gone. Deleted everything. 8:12. The door opened behind me. Footsteps 2 sets leaving. Not stopping, not turning, just leaving. 8:13. Their cars pulled out of the lot. Thomas's BMW turned left toward their house. Elaine's Toyota followed. Taillights disappeared around the corner like the last helicopters out of a combat zone. 8:15. Ruth stood beside me at the window. It's done. Roger that. Across the street, workers removed the last Hart Tactical sign from the building, leaving ghost letters on the brick shadows of what had been, by afternoon. Those would be power washed away too. Regrets, Ruth asked. About what, serving 6 years in a war I didn't know I was fighting, or winning it in 3 days once I accepted the rules of engagement. She squeezed my shoulder. You've got your own campaign now. Helena Valor needs leadership. 8:20. The property across the street sat empty, windows dark, but 3 blocks down, in a small office Noah had helped me lease, Helena Valor Initiative's temporary headquarters was opening for business. Tessa was there, processing our first official order. Veterans would get their supplies. On time. As promised. With honor. I pulled out my phone, changed 3 contacts to do not answer, then blocked them entirely. The numbers disappeared from my history like they'd been extracted from existence. 8:25. The sun broke through the morning clouds, lighting up Ridgeport's downtown. Somewhere in this town, my parents were discovering what it meant to lose a war they'd started. Somewhere, Marissa was realizing her influencer dreams had died in the crossfire of her own artillery. And here I stood, check in hand, freedom secured, future wide open as a deployment horizon. I looked at the ghost letters on the brick one more time. Heart, Tactical, and Outfitters. They'd kept the Heart name. Lost the Heart. 8:30. I turned from the window, picked up my jacket, my old field jacket with captain's bars and combat patches, and headed for the door. Where to now? Ruth asked. Forward, I said. Always forward. I left the building and walked toward my new headquarters, toward the business I'd build on merit instead of blood, toward the family I'd choose instead of the one assigned by DNA. Behind me, the removal truck pulled away from Heart Tactical's corpse, leaving nothing but empty space and shadow letters that would fade by noon. The war was over. I'd won by every metric that mattered. Money returned, reputation restored, freedom secured. But there's a difference between victory and peace. Victory was the check in my pocket and the legal documents in Ruth's files. Peace was what I'd build next, one veteran contract at a time, one honest transaction at a moment, one earned relationship at a time. My phone rang. A veteran organization from Detroit, looking for a supplier who understood logistics and kept promises. Helena Valor Initiative, I answered, my voice steady as a drill sergeant's count. Captain Hart speaking. How can I serve you today? Behind me, the last ghost letters faded from the brick. Ahead, my new sign went up clean. Bright. Earned. I didn't need them to believe I was a hero. I just needed them to become a memory. 8:35 a.m. Monday morning. Campaign complete. I walked forward into my own life. Finally, AWOL from their war. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Lydia's situation? Your perspectives make these stories come alive.